Welcome. We should be live, and everyone should be joining from their respective remote places. Welcome back. It's great to see some more people joining this week for the third in our mini-series on mindful tools for parents. And this week, we are going to be talking about rest and how we can have mindful or mindless rest. And in fact, what it is that we need to understand that we need in terms of rest to be able to recognize where mindfulness practices and tools and strategies could potentially be of use to us, especially as parents, and to help us with our parenting and our relationships with our children. The last weeks, we've spoken about mindfulness being something that involves awareness, attention, non-judgmentally, accepting the way that things are, accepting how situations are, being aware of how that makes us feel, and then having space with our attention to decide to respond and make those responses choices instead of reacting. And that is the main aim of what we wanted to do in these this mini series of 3 sessions, was to really amplify one's curiosity about how mindfulness can be a tool that's really useful for parents and for children, and can potentially benefit the way that you parent, the amount of harmony that you have between in the relationship between you and your children. And so today it came to me that one of the really interesting things that's come up with the pandemic has also been exhaustion. And so I thought maybe if we spoke about the several different types of rest and how we can mindfully understand which types of rest actually we need to be able to experience greater well-being, and to be able to understand how we can use mindfulness practices to support us and sustain us in having well-being more consistently. And so I want us to use today to kind of take a moment to reflect on where we're requiring rest and what type of rest in particular we need, and how we can look into finding out more about mindfulness techniques to help us. So I don't know if many people know that there are so many types of rests, but in the research that I've done, there's been 7 types of rests identified. Riposo in Italian, to make that translation for anyone who's listening in a second language. The different types of rests, I think some you'll recognize, and I think others will be something that potentially is a new awareness for you. First and most obvious type of rest is physical. We need to rest our bodies in addition to sleep. Physical rest can also include anything that restores your body. It can be getting a massage or having a yoga class, something that really feeds your physical energy and brings that restful feeling. Another type is mental. Mental rest is about giving your brain a break. So people need mental rest when they're overwhelmed or struggling to shut off their thoughts or working too hard. And mental rest includes getting those thoughts potentially out of your mind and down onto a piece of paper, or just having time where you don't need to be thinking, time where you can just completely switch off. The third type of rest is emotional. Emotional rest is something I think we underestimate that we need, because it's about being very authentic and honest with yourself about your feelings. We tend to be a society of people pleasers, and that can get in the way of you being able to understand how it is you're feeling. People tend to ask us how we are, and we say great, when actually inside, if we're mindful, we can have the awareness of, now I said great, but I'm not feeling great. And to varying degrees in different cultures, that great is what's expected from the person who's actually asking how you are as well. But in mindfulness and looking at this type of rest, one thing that we can do is actually kind of make a commitment to say, oh, I'm actually not feeling very good. instead of responding or reacting, rather, saying what is the normal response. We actually respond thinking about how we're feeling, which can also bring up ideas of vulnerability as well. But we'll move on to our fourth type of rest, social rest. Social rest is something interesting that is very subjective. So social rest is about pursuing positive and re-energizing and supportive social connections, or just simply taking a break from too much socializing altogether. Introverts and empaths will really need social rest, as being with people is something that emotionally is draining for them, regardless if these interactions are positive or negative. So if you recognize yourself as an empath or an introvert, that might make a lot of sense to you. The fifth type of rest is sensory rest. Now, sensory rest is about really giving all your five senses a break. And I think we've all just had this period of the pandemic where this overload of computer screens and webinars, I personally felt this type of tiredness is a very tangible, different tiredness with respect to other tirednesses related to work. It was exhausting in a way that I've never felt, being on the screen all the time. And I imagine a lot of you have had the same experience over this pandemic time. So we really need sensory rest when, we're overwhelmed from constant stimuli. And this could also be with kids and video games. Constantly being on the screen is something that we really need to take a step back from. And there is a specific type of rest needed where we, are not on these type of devices, or we have space where we can be silent and have our senses just take a breath and take a pause. And the sixth type is creative. Now, creative rest is about getting inspiration from outside world and exploring yourself and your artistic nature, potentially taking time in nature and varying environments to spend time there without needing to produce anything. People who are creative or working in creative jobs also not needing to produce a creation, then that will be something that is a rest that is restorative actually for your imagination. And people who might feel stuck or uninspired and unable to develop new ideas or solutions might find that this is the type of rest that really serves them. And the seventh is spiritual. Spiritual rest is about connecting with something larger than yourself, whatever that is for you, whatever that means for you. People need spiritual rest when they find themselves potentially caught up with so many issues that they really can't seem to connect to the bigger picture. And so these 7 types of rests I wanted to share with you. I wanted you guys to be able to realize that these exist, and then to help you understand how mindfulness can help you by understanding, if I'm aware of where my rest deficit lies, how can I use different tools to replenish those, or to give myself back what it is that I know I need. And so how do you do that? Well, paying attention to where your rest deficits are is a really critical part of the process. Knowing this also is very connected to our productivity. Productivity for parents, if you're exhausted, you're not going to be able to do your best work at work. If you're not getting the right type of rest, you're not going to be able to get past that exhaustion. But this also goes for children as well. So more than productivity, to varying degrees, these types of rests we're all in need of will affect also our relationships. And we cannot be emotionally available, for example, if we're in need of emotional rest. So the reason it's poignant for parents is because if you can recognize your deficit, you can recognize where it is that you need to be able to get more rest in order to be more available or more replenished to be there for your children. So while parenting, we're doing our best, there is something to be said for replenishing ourselves and focusing on ourselves and giving ourselves some well-needed rest to be able to parent better. And in doing so, we're modeling the types of mindful considerations about different types of rest with our children, and we're teaching them how to do the same, which is a way to, as we said at the beginning, ensure our well-being and kind of safeguard our well-being and work preventatively instead of working when we have issues come up. So the reason I decided to talk about this particularly today is that there are benefits to putting mindful practices into your daily routine to avoid exhaustion in some or potentially all of these areas of rest. So we spoke about in the blurb for this invitation today about mindless versus mindful rest. I don't know if anyone is similar to me, but often the easiest type of rest that I go to is turning on the TV. Not exactly something mindful. In fact, it's where you actually are still in sensory input, but your brain can switch off because there's no kind of engagement that's required. So determining what type of rest you need is going to be where you need to start. And starting with awareness of how you're feeling, mindfully tapping into yourself and becoming attuned to what type of rest you're in need of will be really the first step that you must take. Also then looking at where you are expending your energy throughout the day and in which type of area you're expending your energy and which particular activities that are draining for you are the really best places for you to realize and identify where you need to be mindfully choosing practices to be able to get some rest. The areas where you expend the most energy are likely going to be those areas where you need to prioritize. And for example, if you are a graphic designer and you spend most of your time creating new designs, you're using a lot of creativity throughout the day, and that energy will obviously be depleted. And so therefore you might need to prioritize creative rest if your priority obviously is productivity. If you're in the middle of training for a marathon and you're running 15 miles a day, your body is going to need to replenish and rest. And so therefore, it'll be plenty of physical rest that you need to recover. And with parenting, as I said before, one of the most important ones that we underestimate is an emotional rest. And potentially I see a link between sensory and emotional rest as well. When we are overloaded sensory-wise, our emotional thresholds become less. And so therefore the two of them can interact quite a lot. So if we're having an emotional time or difficulties where we're not being able to express ourselves, or potentially we're having difficulties in relationships in or out of work, these are areas that we must prioritize and realize that we need to have some kind of emotional rest in order to get ourselves back to a good standard level, base level. If you want to determine for yourselves what type of rest you need, you can start taking an inventory of how you're spending your time and being very aware of what kind of tasks are taking up the majority of your day and the majority of your energy, and which resources you're using to accomplish those tasks. So what are the things that require the most energy and or leave you the most exhausted? So in order to replenish your energy, you need to schedule restorative activities in your day. And this is where our mindfulness techniques can come in. Rather than use mindfulness as something that you go to once you've reached your upper levels of stress, or once you've realized that something is wrong, mindfulness practices can be things that you put into your day and are in your daily routine, so that you can avoid that kind of build up of stress, and you can work preventatively rather than reactively. So we spoke again about physical rest as an example, but it's a good example for daily routines. If you're physically needing rest, you might find, or physical rest in the sense of, we said that it's something where your body receives, not necessarily when we spoke about a marathon and you're actually physically getting your body to be exhausted. Potentially, if you need physical rest, you need to invest back into your body and feeling good. It could be that you find time to squeeze in a yoga, restorative flow during the day, or if you don't like yoga, potentially actually your favorite rest is sleep. Can you get a nap in some place in the day? Can you find somewhere where you can sit and just feel like physically you're just completely relaxed? Whereas if you need to have creative rest, you might spend some time going for a walk, making sure that you're being mindful when you're walking with your dog in the evening, or go into the city and check out a gallery showing so that you get some inspiration, but it's something that is giving you back in forms of energy and rest. If you're in need of sensory rest, then you might schedule like a no screen Saturday. I think this is something that would be fantastic. A while back, I made an agreement with my kids to have no screen afternoons. And I have to say we've slipped back into bad habits again, and the screens are back in, mainly me. I have to say my children are fantastic. Mainly me getting stuck on doing the screen again and being at work when I'm at home and I need to be putting that away. And understanding that there, without recognizing I need the rest away from devices, I'm actually taking attention and time and energy that I could be using with my kids outside of school. And so being more mindful about that and making decisions of when is a cutoff time for screen can be a great way to ensure some sensory rest. Also, times where you read emails and putting cutoff times where you don't read emails. The fact that we nowadays can be completely available on mobiles, on email, at any time of the day, at every moment of the day, it's almost even when you're not on the screen, something that's consistently there. It's consistently being on call. And if we have in our minds times where we decide that it is a cutoff point, that I won't check my emails, I've had to stop checking emails in the evening because I find that once I'm there, it's a rabbit hole. And so my attention is sucked up and I'm in there and I'm serving, right? So what I do and I feel is a service, so therefore it's difficult to say no. But if I didn't check the email, then it is my rest time, and it's time that I don't dedicate to those practices. And so it's something that's required. It's something that's needed for us to keep our well-being, and it's work-life balance, which I think you've probably heard spoken about a lot, and that's something really that is important that we make space and time for, because time for ourselves is going to make us more productive at work, but then also much better for all those people around us and all the relationships that we have with people. So a goal for the rest and restoring your energy is to make sure that you're incorporating some restorative activities within your needed rested areas during the day, scheduled in if possible during the day, when you can have 5 minutes here or there, no matter where you are. And some of the practices that we've done in the first session and even the second session are great examples of things that you can do that are very small activities, but can increase the positive benefit and the positive impact on your well-being during your day after these very small 5-minute exercises. To remind you of what those were, we did the mindful breath, literally breathing in, bringing your hands up over into your stomach, breathing out as you push your hands down, breathing in as you bring your hands up over your heads, and breathing out as you bring your hands down. A couple of breaths like that during the day will be fantastic for you to be able to replenish little bits of your energy before arriving to exhaustion. And many parents that speak to me understand in premise some of the suggestions that are general suggestions for conscious parenting, but note that they require energy and they require you to feel with enough energy, emotional, physical, mental, whichever it may be, whichever type of rest it is that you need, to be able to have the ability to be conscious parents and to conscious parent in that way. Because if you are needing to see things from your child's perspective and take that time there is a certain amount of investment in energy in what you're doing. And so what I want to propose to you is that potentially mindfulness techniques during the day, little by little, even if it's just the breathing exercise or the sitting for 2 minutes with an alarm on my phone, just listening to 3 sounds, how those mini moments, those mini mindful moments, I like that. Those mini mindful moments can help us just ease off any kind of threat to our general well-being. And the more we introduce them to our daily activities and daily routines easily and frequently, the better off our well-being will be, and the more our well-being is within our control. So I think if you need mental rest, if you need particularly mental rest, it isn't necessary that you think you need 30 minutes of meditation to slow down your thoughts. Instead, I think potentially setting an alarm for a couple of minutes and knowing in those minutes you're going to spend that time having a mindful moment is already an amazing achievement. And where the idea of being a meditator or meditating to a certain degree where you receive lots of benefits can be something that is seen to be difficult or challenging, I think the mindful moments are something pretty easy to start off with, pretty easy to manage to put into your day. And you will see the benefits from just even a couple of minutes of mindfulness practice. And essentially then, when you have the positive feedback of doing these things and receiving some benefit, of course, it becomes a very easy choice to put more and more of them in your day. So I'm hoping that was a clear little insight into how we can be more aware of where we're expending our energy, how we can put attention onto what type of energy we need to replenish and give back to ourselves, and really where in our day are we having activities that are particularly draining, and are those moments where we could have a mindful moment and replenish ourselves, particularly obviously our mental rest, but I think also emotional and physical rest too. And then how that can be such a wonderful practice that we give ourselves that can really have positive impacts on the relationships with our children. And we can also model really healthy well-being practices for our children as well. So I've really enjoyed having these little moments with you as parents, and I would love to have some feedback from you guys to understand what you've got out of it, maybe what you'd potentially like to hear more of. So I think there should be a banner coming up any minute on the screen with my email address. And I would really like to invite and encourage anyone to send me an email and let me know what you thought, some feedback on the event, and potentially anything that you might like to see in the future from September onward. So Francesco is probably going to help me out and put that banner up on the bottom of the screen. Fabulous. Thank you, Francesco. So I really welcome anyone to give me an email and let us know what you thought, what your feelings are, and what you'd like to maybe see in the future. And thank you very much all for listening. I really wish you a really good rest of the day. I hope somebody's enjoying the sun. And I wish you all the very best. Take care.